I'm Sheila Hemphill with Texas Right to Know, and it's a pleasure to have with me today Dr. Constantine or Gus Kostanis. Thank you for being here, Dr. Kostanis.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Kostanis, do I have your permission to be videoing this today and for use, with your permission, possibly to present before legislators or on the website?
Absolutely, you do.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Dr. Kostanis, what type of medicine have you been practicing and what are your credentials?
Well, I'm a surgeon by training, head and neck surgeon, ENT, also an allergist. And then for the past 30 plus years, I've also practiced functional medicine. The reason I got into functional medicine is because in the late 80s, early 90s, I saw a lot of children that there was no solution with a traditional medicine. So the standard of care was inadequate. So I was trying to find out solutions for this population because they went to the pediatricians, they went to the neurologists, and they did what they could, and they did a fabulous job. Some of them responded, and some of them didn't. The ones that didn't respond came to me.
So basically, functional medicine is a methodology of medicine to look for root causes of symptomology rather than just taking the symptoms reported by the patient, issuing a diagnosis, and following it in many instances to the pharmaceutical drug, which may be exactly what you need in that particular situation. However, in certain cases of one particular case study, it was an example of a little boy who had been seen by 5 specialists, had 11 diagnoses, and was on 8 medications. His handwriting under this standard of care, because that would be the standard of care to follow every diagnosis to the pharmaceutical drug, 8 of them. Have you ever seen any children come in to you with multiple medications?
Well, all the children coming to me have failed traditional therapy. Now, to be fair to the traditional doctors and to the system,
standard of care
is, I don't know what the percentage is, but a great majority of them, or a great number of them, I don't know what the percent is, they do respond to drugs. I'm okay with that.
Absolutely.
The question is, what do you do with people that don't respond to drugs?
Well, in this particular case, when the child was able to get to a functional doctor, or also known as integrative physicians, all the same is medicine, the child had gluten intolerance, food allergies, fungus, lead, and nutritional deficiencies. With 2 months of the appropriate care to identify the root causes of the either behavioral or mood problems, which 1 in 6 children are on now some form of prescription medication for mood or behavior problems. Once they were able to resolve that, it was evidenced in the child's neat and orderly handwriting. Now, have you ever seen any problems with children's behavior associated with diets or allergies?
Absolutely, I have. The thing to remember about functional medicine is nothing new. It's 8,000 years old. So the question is, what can you do for this population? So we take 2 populations. One, they respond to pharmaceuticals, which is wonderful. They do it quick and easy. It's done. You don't have to change anything. The question that, again, I pose to you, what do you do the ones that do not respond? So we're not trying to discredit the pharmaceutical industry.
Absolutely.
We're trying to see how can, as a doctor, I want to help my patients any way I can.
Absolutely. Now, the problem occurs can often be directly tied to standard of care, because in the autism situation, it was a period of time where it was proposed to be strictly genetic. So therefore, any physician who is proposing any type of therapy would have been outside the standard of care because it was designated to be genetic. You can't do anything about it. However, there are several brave physicians who did implement protocols for autism that were beneficial and in some instances enabled the children to come back to normal neurological function.
But even if it's genetic, we can't say, well, this population is genetic, so therefore we're going to flush them down the toilet. No, we're trying to help these people. So we tried benign therapies like nutrition, good food. And if they have food intolerances, because almost an allergist, food intolerances, chemical intolerances, that you change that and change the behavior, teach the family to eat correctly, stop eating junk foods. Because the study that I did in 1990, with a dietitian nutritionist. She's now the professor at TCU. And then we did the study together. We had about 13, 14 children with every parameter. And we found out the only vegetable these children ate was one vegetable. Would you like to know what the name of the vegetable was? French fries.
French fries.
That's the only vegetable people consider that a vegetable.
Now, if you'll visit Texas Right to Know and click under medical and under functional medicine, scroll down and you're going to see a 3-minute video of a child who is brought in for allergy testing. The little boy, how you doing? Fine. Tummy aches? No. Stomach aches? No. And they give him sitting down to do a simple assignment and give him an injection to check for chocolate. In a matter of minutes, this child, total personality change, growling, wanting to break pencils, crawling all over his chair, unable to do a simple task. When then they give him, the antigen or whatever it was.
Well, you fix the food intolerance. This is known for more than 100 years. You take somebody with food intolerance. That's what we're talking about. So if you fix the food intolerance, then the person becomes normal again.
So in a matter of minutes, the child who was reporting no problems was given the allergy testing for chocolate, turns into a belligerent, frustrated, angry, acting out child, and then when given the antigen comes back, how you doing? Fine, and is able to complete his work. If our teachers, our parents are not educated to physical root causes that may manifest as psychiatric disorder, we are having children, 1 in 6 now, on some behavioral mood medication that are not looking for the root causes to come out with good outcomes. Now, Dr. Kastanis, regarding the medical board, when you
before we go to the medical board, let me say this. I know that food intolerances work. When I was a resident back in the 80s, I went to a conference. Dr. Willoughby was giving the conference. He was describing food intolerances or food allergies. Some people say they don't have. Nevertheless, and he described me to the T, because every time I ate a sandwich, I fell asleep within minutes. So he said, why don't you go ahead and eat a sandwich, see what happens. In front of the audience, I had a sandwich in 5 minutes like this.
Right.
He desensitized me for a week, and I came right back up. I was convinced that day that food intolerances can change behavior because I wasn't sleepy for the rest of the day.
And food intolerances can include food colorings,
any kind of food,
chemical reactions to scents.
You can drink water. You can drink anything. You can drink Coke or whatever. Some people can tolerate it, some people can't. And I'm dealing with the people that cannot tolerate these foods. So that's what happened. So from 1990, before the first study, we're helping a lot of people. And then by 2010, when the complaint came in, because they were saying that I am lying to people or misleading people.
Now, on the Texas Medical Board site, their website is tmb.state.tx.us. The first thing you can click on is to look up a license. So any physician can be looked up by name. Now, the case, in Dr. Kastanis' case, this is dated back to 2010. On it, it states the board entered an order imposing an administrative penalty, imposing a fine of $500 for using misleading advertising statement. Do you remember what you had on your website?
Yes, of course. I had a child, and I said, if you have autism, and consider nutritional changes, it may help you. It didn't say cure anybody, fix anybody, maybe. So it's a big question mark.
The statement said that nutrition, immune support, and detox may improve your autistic child's behavior. So because of that statement, you returned it to the medical board as violating a Rule 190.8 in the Texas Administrative Code, Title 22, Part 9, Section 190.8, of false, misleading, and deceptive advertising for statements that is absolutely true.
But let me say this. At the time that we went to the board, I believe it was the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the big
Journal of New England Medicine?
Yeah, either that or forget which one. About 20 pediatricians from a huge university had published saying how nutrition can benefit autistic children. And I showed to them, it was ignored. because it was new, I guess.
Because the standard of care at the time, if I'm correct, was pretty much saying that you can't do anything about autism.
But 20 pediatricians from, I think it was Harvard, one of those big universities, saying nutrition plays a role. So I was saying the same thing that the university was saying. I wasn't curing anybody. I was just helping people.
So when the board told you that they were going to impose this administrative fine, how did you think that would?
Well, what they told me, that it's not there. And the reason that I agreed to pay it is, well, it's like a parking ticket. It's going to go away. Just don't do this again. Don't have this. Okay, I agreed because I thought it was going to go away. I didn't want to hire lawyers and do this. So they told you never going to be posted, but it's not. Still, it's going to be there for the rest of my life.
9 years later, it's still showing up.
It's going to show forever.
Forever. Of a situation that you had scientific evidence to substantiate your statement.
But better than that, they promised me they're not going to post it. That's why I paid the fine. Because
the only alternative for him would have been to pursue onto State Office of Administrative Hearings.
Expensive, excessive law procedures.
They can run for a 2-year procedure, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not in the millions, for physicians to defend themselves against something as innocent that did not relate to patient injury nor patient harm and was substantiated by scientific information of the validity of your statement. That wasn't even worded as an affirmative, as a may.
Right.
Is there anything else you'd like to state about any other incidents?
Well, I had another incident a couple of years later. One of the TikTok employees reported to the board some frivolous things that we're practicing below the standard of care. And I understand the board has to investigate. I have no problem with that. I presented the evidence. It took about 3 years to do this. And we
what resulted?
Well, let me say what happened. So we went to several meetings, hired an expensive lawyer, went through everything. A second meeting, they say dismissed, and they rescinded it, and then eventually dismissed it. And I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was dismissed. I was completely no findings of fact. They dismissed it, right? But it still shows of the accusation, like me accusing you of being a murderer.
And it's still there, even though it was dismissed, and nothing came from the situation.
Nothing was filed. Nobody was guilty, but why is it still appearing? I don't understand. Because if I accuse you of something, and
we're not talking patient injury or patient harm.
No.
Dr. Castanis, have you been asked, are you seen in the medical profession as being a speaker on autism? Have you been asked to speak on protocols?
I have been, yes, of course. I've given a lot of lectures.
So there are practitioners, physicians in the field who are aggressively pursuing solutions to problems that have not been...
Well, as a doctor, you're supposed to. That's your job.
However, if we are bound by the standard of care, are we not locked in to the same type of health care we're experiencing in Texas, where according to the 2018 Commonwealth Fund, Texas ranks 44th in the nation, 46th in prevention and treatment, and 51st in affordability and access. In our last budget, we were spending over 30% of the state budget on health care to have those kind of rankings as 44th in the nation. During the last 2 years of investigating physicians' complaints against the medical board, I have been following various different physicians' court cases through their SOA appeals, reviewing transcripts and depositions. From this review, we're turning over very disturbing information that, in fact, the only authority for oversight of the Texas Medical Board, validated through open records requests from the governor's office, as well as emails from the Texas Medical Board, revealed that the only oversight of the board is the 181 legislative offices.
Let me say this. I went to school for 15 years to be a doctor. I gave up my youth, and I'm a researcher, and I'm going to be 72 years old tomorrow, and I'm researching to this day, and I will continue to research for solutions, okay? That's why I want to become a doctor, okay? Now then, when you go to any medical school, anywhere in the world, And you go to Sisson and Loeb is one of the major books in internal medicine. And other people, big, huge books like this. They tell you how to practice, what you need to know. Nowhere, anywhere in these documents, they talk about the standard of care. The standard of care was invented by lawyers, okay, so they can make more money for themselves.
Well,
So really,
actually, the origin of standard of care ties back to a tugboat
Right.
incident,
but
and so it became a category to try to pigeonhole.
but you can't take the human body and pigeonhole it. But I mean, thousands of years now, many wars. The 2 world wars that I know, they tried to do this to humanity. It didn't work.
There is definitely a place for standard of care. When you're talking about protocols for infection, good procedures, good protocol, there's a place. But when it comes to individuals, this aspect that there is one size fits all is not
But innovation,
valid for good outcomes.
Innovation cannot beat the standard of care. Now, the standard of care, we're talking about the scientific method that they want to hang their heads on it. And you look at the scientific method, it has 2 legs. Okay, one with numbers and one with the experience of the doctor. For the past 8,000 years, we have, how the observer sees the procedure, the disease, and report it. And we assume the researcher, he gave up his life to do this, and we have to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's not a crook, he's not lying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he's reporting real things that he sees, and I'm sure there are people that do things that inappropriately, like any other. We're humans. But I would say over 95% of the doctors are very ethical. They care about their patients. They want to help the patient.
But what we have found out that many of the problems being reported that are being accredited to the medical board are actually the problem resides in the legislation law. For instance, when it was discussed about that there was no oversight of the medical board, and during a medical board meeting, I brought that up. The statement was made regarding complaints about the agency. Well, first, the medical board had never had a link on the website to be able to file a complaint against the agency. There had never been a published policy on how to file a complaint against the agency. So the current policy was published July 2nd of 2018. This policy has the complaint about the board to go to the board to be resolved by the agency. So the complaint about the agency to be resolved by the agency. And when I asked in a board meeting about that situation, what became clear is the reason it's that way is that, according to executive director, they would be more than happy to have another entity oversee these complaints, but the legislature has never set it up that way.
Yeah, here's a message that I want to get. Okay, doctors they dedicate their time, and they should be allowed to do what they're supposed to do in the operating room. Lawyers are supposed to be in the courtroom, not in the operating room. Now, what happens in most of the boards throughout the United States, the lawyers want to be doctors. They should go to school to be doctors. How can a lawyer judge a doctor? That's the question.
The situation to evaluate complaints against physicians are many instances pursued by lawyers, and there is very little, if any, communication between the accused physician and the investigators. So we will be following up with some further videos of individuals who have inside information on how the process for investigating complaints is done.
The investigations should be done the way we used to done in the 80s. I remember one case. That's how it should be. Okay, it was a lady that I saw in the operating room. In the emergency room after hours. I did an endoscopy. She had a foreign body, and I think the charge was about $500. Mm-hmm. So she was Medicare. Mm-hmm. She submitted the invoice to the Medicare. And of course, I was not at the time accepting Medicare only. It was full payment. Mm-hmm. So
she receives a bill for $500.
And I said, she says, I don't have any money to pay you. I says, okay, can you pay $10 a month?
$10 a month.
For a long, whatever you pay, whatever you want to pay.
Right.
She didn't want to pay any of it. And then her son intervenes and says, I'm going to report to the board. So go ahead and report to the board. After he did this, a week later, I received a call from a board member who was a doctor, and he wanted to know what happened.
So you actually were able to speak to someone about
He called me. He called me. He says, "Doctor, what happened?" I told him what happened. And I says, "Look, I'm not pursuing her. I didn't report to anyone. I says, pay if you can, because I'm entitled to something." He says, "I get it. You know, this is a frivolous complaint."
But the key point
he closed. I got a call from a doctor to a doctor.
Doctor to doctor.
Not a lawyer to a doctor.
So that that the process can ensure that when there are errors and mistakes, more importantly, that the problem can be identified so it's not repeated, so that the corrections can be made, so that the medical board can, in fact, live up to their mission to protect the public. So thank you, Dr. Kastanis, for all that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you for the interview.
Visit www.texasrighttoknow, and please share this video through your social media and email list.